We're talking about a revolution today, everybody. Welcome. Oh, Lois, could you cut there? Thank you. Um, yeah, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for session 2 of this year's Leadership Academy. And we previewed in our last session a deeper dive into what we call housing herstory, but we're going to actually push that to August. Today's focus is going to be on different approaches and styles of community organizing. And we're really lucky to have a lot of in-house support on this topic, and you all, of course, to help us make sure that we're, right, everybody helping each other lift up into and sharing, right, those good insights, lifting us up into, you know, a broader sense of the bigger picture, right, than we could have just by ourselves. I want to encourage you, as we had done, I think, pretty successfully in our last session, to introduce yourselves in the chat. Just like last month, we're gonna have time later on for us to interact with each other and talk and get to know each other a little bit. So it's good if you'd like to just put down what is your name, what is your pronouns, what org are you representing. Irma, you're doing a great job also typing questions into the chat. I see this question about a recording. We're actually gonna share with you in just a minute the link to last month's recording. We are again recording this session, and that'll be available next month. I have a couple other housekeeping topics just to make sure folks are using the chat box. Reminder to please mute yourself and unmute yourself really skillfully when you're talking and you're not talking. Hello to folks introducing themselves, Kenna and May and Hannah. A reminder too, when we are talking with each other, to speak from your own experience using I statements. And reminding folks to, right, take care of themselves as needed, if needed, taking time away and coming back in. And yeah, I had mentioned we're gonna share the link to the webinar. I think Dolores is looking for the link now, and she'll just drop that into the chat box. If anybody loses that link or needs it sent another way, you can always reach back out to us. I will introduce myself again real quick. My name is Ronald Flannery. I'm an organizer working with EBHO this year to support Leadership Academy. Currently, actually in the state of Maine, I use he, they pronouns. And yeah, it's a really awesome pleasure to be able to introduce a colleague of mine who's gonna be really anchoring a lot of today's lesson, Dolores Tejada. And I'm just gonna give you Dolores's bio real quick. They are a community organizer who uses a disability justice and intersectionality framework to work towards collective liberation. Dolores was born and raised in the Bay Area from immigrant parents and began organizing in high school around equitable education. They attended Dominican University, majoring in political science, and after college, Dolores developed a youth organizing program at an independent living center, which was successfully advocating for the preservation of funding for adult education, as well as increasing access on the new BART train cars, and developing a more diverse and inclusive high school curriculum. Dolores ran a successful Get Out the Vote campaign in 2016 that increased voter turnout. I know Dolores is working very hard this year on Get Out the Vote Again. In 2017, Dolores was a featured speaker at the Oakland Women's March. She is currently the accessibility coordinator for the San Francisco Dyke March and a member of the No Lose Board of Directors. Dolores believes in the power of community to achieve equity, which is what drives her to organize. And they have seen the shift in housing in the Bay Area throughout their lifetime. It motivates Dolores to build that people power so that we can achieve just housing for all. Dolores identifies as and holds numerous identities, including fat, disabled, queer, femme, and brown. They now are using exclusively they, them pronouns. They are just an incredible and caring ally and friend. And I'm gonna pass it to Dolores here to share some of her gift with all of us. So
awesome, thank you. And I just realized that that bio is out of date. I'm no longer working with Dyke March or No Lose in an official capacity, instead focusing on other work right now that includes mutual aid and some more disability justice stuff. So yeah, let's jump right in. First, I just want to go over an agenda really quickly. Thanks, Ronald, for that awesome intro. And we're gonna talk, y'all got to learn about Ronald last time, so I wanted to make sure, we both wanted to make sure that we share both of our histories with everyone. And what you'll see on the screen now is an agenda for the afternoon. So we did number 1 already, and we're going to do an exercise called Across the Room to open up this space. And we'll jump into some community organizing. Then I'll toss it back to Ronald to talk about transformative organizing in particular and a Skillshare skill. We'll do some I believe we'll do a large breakout group activity. We'll have Q&A, and then we'll talk about the Learning Lab next week for those of you who are part of the Leadership Academy class this year, and then we'll close out. So let's jump right in. So across the room. So this is an exercise that usually Leadership Academy does the first session or the second session. And we are not able to do it in person, so we're modifying it to be a part of this class now. So what I would like everyone to do is to do their gallery view so they can see as many people as possible on their screen. That way you can see what people's responses are. So traditionally we have people on 2 sides of the room, or on 1 side of the room, I'm sorry, and then when I read a statement out loud, if it resonates with people, they will cross over to the other side of the room. In lieu of being able to share space together, what we are going to do is use our thumbs up feature, which is a part of the features here on Zoom. It's part of the reactions that you'll see on the bar in the bottom of the screen. There's 2 reaction types, and one of them is the thumbs up. So let's just do a practice round of everyone practicing to give a thumbs up. Awesome. I see William is able to do it. Ronald, I don't know who this is, but it looks like an empty room, but someone is there who gave a thumbs up. Oh yeah, someone is doing it. If you're on camera, you can just give a visual thumbs up. That works too. I see a lot of people doing the thumbs up feature. Awesome. And so if folks on the phone want to participate, I will give the option for everyone to be able to unmute. Ronald, I think you can do that as a co-host, and then just put yourself on mute, everybody else. And then those of you who are not on mute, if you if it resonates with you, you can say I, or you can say thumbs up, so we can hear you. Okay, so I will read the statement out. You will do a thumbs up, or you will say I if you are on the phone. And just as a heads up, these questions are meant to dig a little deeper. And so please take a moment if you need to, and you do not have to answer any question that you do not feel comfortable answering. But that means that when we look at who is giving a thumbs up to these statements, we should consider that some folks, either it doesn't resonate with them, or they just don't want to disclose that it resonates with them. So let's keep that in mind and instead focus on who is raising their thumbs. So we'll start. The first question, thumbs up if it resonates with you. You were born and raised in the city you currently live in. Yeah, I see a few thumbs up. Yeah, there's a lot of thumbs up from a lot of people who aren't on camera, so just make note of that. Someone close to you is currently homeless. Let's take a moment and go through the gallery to see who's raising their thumbs up. You moved to the city you are currently in because you thought it was safer or better than where you were before. You grew up in a house that was owned by your parents or your guardian. Yeah. You have a college education. A lot of thumbs up for that one. Next round of questions. You were the first in your family to go to college. You or someone you know has been evicted. You never have to worry about paying rent. Your parents are or were able to help you financially when you needed it. You and your family have been here, or where you currently are, for more than 3 generations. Thank you. So let's take a moment really quick and just reflect on that. I know that sometimes these questions can invoke or bring up a lot of feelings for people. So I want to honor that space and just give us 30 seconds. Okay. So now we will take a couple minutes to reflect. And this will be a time where you can unmute yourself and speak and share your thoughts or type it in the chat box. Do you feel like you have commonality with other people after seeing who was raising their thumbs? I see more people still using the thumbs up feature. That's great. What does this bring up for folks? How did this exercise make you feel? Does anyone want to share their thoughts? Or maybe there's comments in the chat box. I can't see the chat box when I'm sharing my screen. So Ronald, if you want to read out any comments.
Deetra and Irma both agreed, feeling the commonality, as well as Nina. Lillian says it's a good diversity of experiences in this space. I agree. Emma just wrote, the commonality is a lot of people realizing education can cure a lot of personal situations. especially talking about finance. And then I think I heard Michael.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, 'cause, I'm not exactly, the technology is not exactly, it's, it tracks from the experience of paying attention to the screen and trying to figure out how to navigate through here. So that's the net end of it. I'm not able, wasn't able to look at the screen and see who's thumbs up. And then some of the questions were, I was not able to, it's like the college question. Yeah, I went to college, but no, I didn't graduate. It's like there's a partial, it's a part, so it is what it is. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Everyone else is unmuted, so if you want to share something, you can. And you now have the capacity to mute yourself. So if you're not speaking, mute yourself on your own device. Did answering any particular questions or opting not to answer any particular questions make you feel particularly vulnerable?
I'll share. Can you hear me? Hi, it's Deetra. What resonates with me is, do you know someone that's been evicted? So for me, yes. And unfortunately, too many people in my family and in my circle, from residents to people that I've worked with, because I've been in a property manager for many years. I've had to go to court, I've had to evict, and I've had to help people that are going through eviction. I'm very sensitive to eviction. And even now in COVID, with the moratoriums in place, which I'm in favor of, I'm in the middle because I'm an investor, I have tenants, and which I'm helping the best that I can. And I'm encouraging other landlords, to do the same. But it's awful when we have to evict or when someone's going through eviction. I feel like everyone deserves housing, safety, decent housing, and affordable housing. So that sticks with me the most, eviction.
Thank you for sharing that. Would somebody else like to share?
I did feel, this is Nina Jorgensen from Hope Solutions, rep leader. I definitely connected with being first in the family to go to college and graduate high school and college through the majority of my family. Yet I still ended up with financial crisis and being homeless because of domestic violence and financial insecurities and crisis. So even though like going to college is supposed to be very helpful, and it can also, other things in the road can disrupt that, and it leaves you very vulnerable to feel shameful about it, but still being proud of yourself for being the first one to go to college, yet also having setbacks, but can make a better comeback though.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, Nina. I have a very similar experience myself. In fact, I wasn't entirely sure. Sorry, I just realized my video wasn't on. I actually wasn't entirely sure how to respond to that because of the way that it was phrased as having a college education. I have that. I don't actually have a college degree though, because mitigating circumstances forced me to leave during my last semester there. And yeah, I mean, I've been homeless myself. I became homeless 5 years ago, and I spent 5 months living in a vehicle. And this was after having gone to, the ivory tower that most people think of as it's like a fail-safe measure that ensures that you will never experience that ever. But of course, that's not the reality of the situation. And it's a very strange experience to kind of navigate. So I appreciate Nina voicing that, and I share the same experience.
Thank you. Yeah, so when we do this exercise, and I hope that this also had a similar impact with folks since we're doing it over Zoom, it is to name the commonalities and the common experiences that those of us in the shared space have, as well as the differences and where some folks may have more experience than others or life experience to share. And that is part of what we want to keep in mind and carry throughout all of these sessions and the work that we do, which is that part of organizing, part of our work is the community education piece, which is that we all carry knowledge to share with each other and that we all have something to learn. And we all have common ground that can unite us, even if we don't necessarily understand each other through shared experience, we can appreciate people's perspective. So let's go to the next slide. So this is a quote from Dolores Huerta, a very prominent organizer. And she says, "Every moment is an organizing opportunity, every person a potential activist, every minute a chance to change the world." And we're going to kind of carry that with us as well, because what she is saying, or what I take from this quote, and you can also share back what you think you take from this quote in the chat box, which is that we all have the opportunity to create change, and to also impact other folks. And this speaks to the power of relationship building, which we're going to talk about more in depth a little bit later. So first, we're going to start with what you all think community organizing is. When you hear that phrase, or what is your experience with community organizing? What is your understanding of community organizing? There is no wrong answer. You can unmute yourself and share, or you can share in the chat box and Ronald can read some of them back. Does anyone want to share? Yeah.
I'll go. I have a union background, but I also, at one particular point, I got involved with a faith-based community organizing group, and did some work in South Alameda County. And so that's primarily what my experience with community organizing was in that context. And then during the course of that time, we partnered with other allies during the course of the time. So it's building relationships and working together with other community advocates. And it's a long-term relationship that we're trying to maintain. And part of that is maintaining those relationships that you connect to along the way. It's very intentional. So.
Can you say your name as well?
That's Michael Wharton.
Great.
Yeah.
And thanks. And that reminds me, thank you. Right before you speak, for anyone else who wants to speak, just say this is, and then your name, and you can start speaking, just so we all know, we can start connecting the voices and the faces with the names. Does anyone want to go next? Or Ronald, do you want to read some responses from the chat box?
I can go next. This is Velma here from SBA Architects. At first, when I hear community organizing, I think of Barack Obama. But on a more serious note, in the work that I do, for me, I think community organizing is when I'm working on community projects, so projects that are embedded in communities like schools, reaching out to the appropriate stakeholders that need to be involved in the project and maintaining those relationships and trying to maintain the intensity at which we have our first meeting, and the level of enthusiasm and contribution that we have at the first meeting, and trying to find ways to maintain that throughout the process, especially for architectural projects. They're usually long-term, and you have people that have to spare their personal time to be involved in addition to the work that, their jobs that they have to do. So it's trying to find ways to make the process of being involved in developing a project meaningful, and trying to maintain the level of enthusiasm throughout the process. Thank you.
Thanks, Val. I just want to read some other thoughts from the chat. From Irma, that community organizing is about reaching out to your neighbors to help them and bring them together. May saying relationship building and deep connection in order to harness the collective power to change policy. Robin saying that they think of power and decision-making rooted from the ground up. Other comments here that community organizing is about getting with people to achieve a solution or bring up issues that need to be addressed, setting the agenda of issues. And then I love William's comment here, just that thinking of community organizing is exactly like it sounds, organizing your community through shared experience for a cause that impacts that community. And there's other thoughts here too that are really great. And Deetra, I did not know that you were an organizer at Acorn. That's cool.
Awesome. And I want everyone to start thinking about where you have seen community organizing in action. We had one example from Michael, and we're gonna ask you to share your examples of community organizing in action in just a second. But first, we just wanted to cover really briefly some history of organizing. There's a long history of organizing, especially in this country, but a really powerful time for organizing happened in the 60s and 70s. So we have three examples here. So the first one is during the Civil Rights Movement in Selma. And the second one here is the disability rights movement this is from like 1964 or so, with people taking over a federal building demanding that regulations be implemented that will allow people with disabilities, or make it a law that people with disabilities have the right to access government buildings. And then, so this took place in San Francisco and was the longest takeover of a federal building. They stayed in the building for about 32 days and collaborated with the Black Panthers to make sure that they were fed. So it was a cross-section organizing. And yeah, it's great. Look it up. Section 504. Sit-ins in San Francisco. And then this third photo here is another photo of Black Panther organizing in action. We know that the Black Panthers also started here in the Bay Area, and we're doing a lot of organizing work and doing getting some basic needs met for people, like their breakfast program for young people. So this is your opportunity to think of some maybe more recent organizing that you have seen in your communities. Feel free to share what you think, or what you've seen in your communities taking place.
Velma here, I get the feeling that there might be activities that people have been involved in that is community organizing, but they might not know it's community organizing because it's not as visible or active, or doesn't involve like a ton of people, yeah, I don't know if others share that same point of view.
Yeah,
because I've only heard that term recently and in the media, and it's always associated with huge events. I mean, like even the photos you showed, like the Black Panther events. But for me, like the work that I described, I do that all the time. And it wasn't until I thought about it critically that I thought, hey, that's community organizing as well. Or even when you organize like a neighborhood party, or organize a group of neighbors in a building, I think that's also community organizing as well.
Yeah, I think you're bringing up a lot of really important facets. Is which piece of the organizing, or which piece of these events is a community organizing piece, right? So we're seeing the end results in those 3 photos, but the community organizing piece, which we'll talk about in more in depth, is the getting people together in small or large groups. It doesn't always have to be a huge group, and it sometimes, oftentimes, is very under recognized, and that is still just as valid. Yeah.
Lots of comments in the chat to Velma from that thought you're sharing, pointing to some of the smaller acts. And I think looking at things like the Berkeley Mutual Aid Network, or the work of different tenants unions to get information out there, or even just youth working to get ballot initiative so that 16 and 17-year-olds can have the right to vote in their school boards. I think the images we're showing are showing you these big kind of tip of the iceberg moments, and then we know underneath the water we have this much bigger part of the iceberg, the work that builds up to that.
Yeah. Any other thoughts before I move on? Okay, let's keep it moving.
I actually wanted to mention, this is Chris, just, you know, I think that a really great example of community organizing recently was what the students from, I think Oakland Tech led one of the first really big Black Lives Matter rallies in the aftermath of, you know, George Floyd's killing. So that was really, really shortly after, and they, you know, it was like a massive, massive march from Oakland Tech down to downtown, like 14th in Oakland. And after that, I saw like the students from Mission High and SF do something similar, and really kind of snowballed. So I just like that as like an example of, you know, youth-led, youth-centered organizing, and how that kind of you know, stacked upon itself to create even more. So
yeah, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go to the next slide. So here's what community organizing is. Again, this is my experience, so there may be some disagreement, but this is how I understand organizing. So community organizing is doing 3 major things. It's power building. So you're building power within yourself and within other people. It's power shifting, which means you are shifting the powers where a lot of the certain types of power exist. So you're, and by building power within yourself and others and reclaiming power, you are shifting where power lies. And it's power sharing. So that means you are sharing power amongst yourself and other people as well. And you're using your collective power to create change. Other things that I believe define community organizing is it is about involvement. It's about getting people engaged into an issue that needs to have a shifting, a sharing, and a building of power. It also is educating, but it's not just the basic education role. It's the community organizing piece comes with the next step, which is educating with the purpose of taking action. So it's not just telling people what their rights are. It is telling people these are your rights, and here's how we're going to make sure people respect them and uphold them, right? So for example, with the tenants union that someone gave, yes, they are passing out information on what the current rights are, but they also are sharing out, hey, the extension for the eviction moratorium is up with city council and can be extended, but we need you to call in and share. So it's education with the purpose of action. It's working towards change, right? It's recognizing that the status quo is not working, it's not functioning, and you are trying to shift the status quo. It's naming your targets. I have a lot of qualms about different organizing, personal opinions, different parts of organizing. I'm gonna name the Women's March because in my bio you heard that I spoke at the Women's March. But one of the things that I did when I spoke at the Women's March is I challenged the audience, and I challenged them to take action, and that was actually something that they did not appreciate. And the Women's March is a great action that happens every year, but they are not naming any specific targets. Who is their target? What are they shifting? They have the power building, but are they shifting power? Are they trying to figure out a way to share power that they're building with other people? Are they trying to elect new people into office? So oftentimes when we are trying to build power, we have to name our targets. And our target could be, we want to change this policy, change this law, or it can be a person. We want to get this person out of office, or we want to get this person into office. So naming your target is a crucial part of community organizing, because you want to have an end result, right? So that's the last piece. It is results focused. What is our end game? What is our result? And that also reminds us to name our victories. No matter how big or small, we want to name our victories. And even if we get sidestepped, even if something doesn't happen, we build upon the quote unquote losses and figure out how to continue to move towards our collective victory or our collective vision. All right. Any reflections, thoughts, questions on that one? Awesome. Here's what I think community organizing is not. And these are going to be very obvious to all of you. It is not about one individual. So even if our target is to elect a person into office, and again, EBHO is a 501c3, so we do not endorse any particular candidate, but hypothetically, if a community campaign was to get someone into office, that's different than saying it's only about one individual. You want to, theoretically, you're electing this person because they have a really strong position on specific policies that you care about, right? It's not always about that one person, but also when you're organizing, if you are the organizer, it is never about you. One of the first things I learned is when I'm at actions, and if it's an event I organized, I never want to be seen. I want the people I organize who are directly impacted by the issue to be at the forefront and to carry the message. I am there to serve the purpose of the greater good. It is not about me as an individual. It is about the collective greater good. It is not a short-term solution. And that's to say, organizing is long-term. Organizing is deep. It is not one event. It is multiple things, multiple steps. Organizing is not an individual power grab. So if you are organizing people and you want to make sure that when you're organizing people, and Ronald will talk about this too, that they're also recognizing that this isn't the space for them to come in and say, this is my thing, we're all going to carry it. It's about saying, this is my thing, do others relate? What can we do? And then the last thing it is not, which might be controversial, is that it's not event planning, right? It's not simply getting people to come to a neighborhood picnic. It is, and this touches back on the education into action. It is events into action. You cannot host an event and plan an event and say that you are organizing. There has to be action to it. So there's been, and keeping in mind the things that I just shared around having and naming targets and goals and building relationships, if you keep those in mind, it won't just be an event, a singular event, it'll be an action. Thoughts on that one? Cool. So two components to organizing, or major components to organizing, that I want to highlight and that we are going to delve into, at least this first one, is the relationship building piece. So part of being a great organizer is you want to build relationships with people. It definitely requires being an extrovert in a lot of ways, at least part of the time when you're working with people, because you want to be able to connect with people on their personal issues and tying them into the collective goal of the larger community. So a lot of people, or when I have done organizing, I'll give an example where I was meeting with someone and they said, this bus stop, like I need this bus stop to get to work. They're talking about taking it out. I don't know what to do. So that is a very personal issue for them. But we extend that by saying, hey, do you meet other people at the bus stop that you talk to regularly? Do your neighbors also use this bus stop? How do we get a petition together so we say it's not just affecting you, but it's impacting your entire community? Do we find out where the nearest bus stop is? Is that way too far for anyone to reach? How is this impacting the larger community, and how do we see the community impact? And let's organize around that. So it's also checking in. So that's a continuation of the relationship building, is maintaining those relationships by checking in with people. You want to make sure that folks are continuing to stay engaged, and you're also giving them the opportunity to stay engaged. And it's sharing information. So sometimes sometimes there's different meetings. Sometimes there's a lot of stuff going on. So if you have more people doing the work together, it's easier to get done. If I can't attend a meeting, I'm going to tap someone else to go, and they're going to report back to everybody else. So that's part of the information sharing. It's about the collective knowledge and using that collective knowledge and collective education to reach our end goal. In terms of leadership building, that is an important part of organizing, because organizers will get burned out. This is heavy work. This is complicated work. So when we are doing relationship building, we also have the opportunity to engage in leadership development. And when we're engaging in leadership development, we're sharing the power, right? And we're preparing other folks to also take on part of the organizing tasks that will help expand our impact. When we look at any action that takes place, for example, the action around the Oakland Tech students, it was a group of Oakland Tech students who brought that together. And having been sort of engaged or hearing about how that was being organized, I know that there was an Oakland Tech student, or there was a student who was like checking on accessibility. There was a student who was in charge of the route. There was a student in charge of safety. So they divided these different tasks for that particular action, and they were able to organize collectively. So building up people's leadership skills is important, especially if you are the lead organizer. Someone helped you and trained you how to do those skills, and you want to share that knowledge, right? So it's skills building, which leads to capacity building. And one of the important things about both of those is that once you build skills and capacity, if you are quote unquote the lead organizer, you want to be able to delegate. So as an organizer, you have to be able to let go of responsibility and encourage folks to take leadership, because that's also building their skills, right? So delegation is super important. And another thing again is that it's continuous. Even if you consider yourself an organizer already, you are the learning never stops. You have to continue to build your skills and recognize that if you are in a position where you are a lead organizer, if your skills are building, you want to share those skills with other folks and continue to share that knowledge as a part of leadership development. So you're developing yourself continuously and developing other people continuously. Any thoughts? All right. So now I'm going to hand it over to Ronald, who's going to speak specifically about one of the organizing models that we use and we are shifting more to using within EBHO, and that is transformative organizing. And I think Ronald is going to share his screen now. which, yeah, Ronald's screen is up. So I'm going to hand it over to Ronald.
Hey. Whoops. I actually wanted to show you this tool first. And maybe just to say, Dolores, you just threw so much wisdom at us. Thanks so much. I know I was taking notes. I got to work in the same space with Dolores for years and took so many notes then too. It's just, there's so much wisdom there. And I think you paused and asked several times if we had thoughts. I was just gonna say, Dolores, I think we all have a lot of thoughts. And I guess if you're one of those people excited to start talking and debriefing, we are going to have time soon, once I get through this next section, to riff and share with each other. So yeah, we've just kind of gone conceptually, and I think a lot of important principles about community organizing. This is a more concrete tool that we developed at EBHO. I'm showing you just what it looks like. It's a single piece of paper. There's nothing magic about it. Split into 5 sections, introducing, sharing stories, the broader picture. And it's an example of a tool that we can use to build relationship and build power with each other. And we would refer to it as a transformative organizing tool. As I just said, designed to grow relationship, but to grow especially our resident and community base around the shared belief in the common good, to build power behind the common good. I have here a quote from EBHO, who's I think has been affiliated with the National Domestic Workers Alliance. I just love this idea that it's precisely the people considered the least likely who end up inspiring people the most. And I've been so inspired by the unlikely leaders. And I think maybe you identify as an unlikely leader, right? And what does that do then when we do step up and use our voices, and how does that, right, encourage others to get involved? So the kind of power we are trying to build, I showed you the tool, and what I wanted to do is just kind of walk through the different steps of this tool. The very first step is to introduce yourself to a person. And that's actually, if you've ever met an organizer, usually they're holding a clipboard, and you may walk up to the person and you want to, I always say, to have a smile on your face. And Dolores said as well, it's work that I think requires you to, even if you're introverted, to try to step out of a shell and to be more extroverted, to reach your hand out to another. And I think that's really important because the work here is to make a connection. And I've told lots of folks too, like, just so many of us have had jobs in the service sector, the service economy, or retail, or as a cashier, or so many different kinds of jobs where we have to have that smile on our face. I think it comes naturally to many of us, and it's so important to building power. But thinking of it as that skill, right, of trying to, yeah, smile and be friendly and make it so that they want to talk to you, even if you're holding a clipboard. I put EBHO here as well. It's usually good to introduce the organization that you're with. That's why we're always wearing those t-shirts, right? And really quickly after the introduction, you want to actually start into why are we here? And the very first part of this tool is what we call the housing story share. It's about trying to draw out this individual's story. The reason, or one of the reasons why housing is so such a good umbrella topic for this kind of organizing is because everybody is impacted in some way or another by the housing crisis in the Bay Area. There's nobody who's immune to the effects of it, even if they're in a much more comfortable situation. And then of course we seek to build with those who have experience the worst of the housing crisis. And so it's usually a really easy connecting point to ask a question like, what difficulties have you had trying to find secure housing? I put or your loved ones in parentheses. Sometimes it's both, sometimes it's the individual and their loved ones. And I think just speaking to the fact that we want to connect with people and their hearts, right? And get them to open up and be a little bit more vulnerable so we can make that good connection. And these are other things as well, things like making eye contact as best you can. I put listening and hearing. I think it's kind of, those are two different things. You can be hearing somebody not listening, you can be listening not hearing. It's really trying to take in their words and let their words resonate with you. There's an old rule that we call the 70-30 rule, which is to say you should only be talking 30% of the time, and that you want to be asking probing questions to get a little deeper, and that ideally the individual you're talking to is taking up about 70% of the space. Obviously everybody's different, and if you've ever had a one-on-one with me, you know I talk mostly the whole time, so I've always struggled to stick to this, but I think it's about making a connection. It's about getting to that person's story. And it's this idea, right, that we know how we feel, right, and using our vulnerability then and our ability to connect as our strength, and using that vulnerability to bring us together. And it really matters, and especially if the folks we're talking to have been or have felt especially isolated with their housing situation. I think it is a really important connecting point. Once we've made the connection, it's really exciting, right? But then we want to scale up to the broader picture, and the whole point is to take this new meaningful relationship that we're building and try to set it towards this action, right? And trying to get people involved in our work. So we scale up then in the next section by asking about what they think the actual root cause is. And I think it can be a real light bulb for some folks, because I think there are many who are conditioned to think of their own experience of housing insecurity as their own fault. And so to say, actually, you know what, you're telling me about, you know, your struggle paying rent, that's something that we hear all around this neighborhood. This is a shared problem. And so like trying to get them to think more macro about how do we fix the problem for all of us. We have this specific question of the price of homes and rent going up, but there are many different questions that we could get to there. If it's a neighborhood with many unhoused people, you might ask about, what do you think, why do you think we're seeing so many more people now living on the street? And questions like that I think we have to be a little bit careful with, because it might unearth, right, some ideas that we don't agree with. And the point here is not to educate the person about what the actual issues are. It's to start to plant seeds to say that whatever they feel the issue is, I mean, to a degree, right? Hopefully they see that actually there's work that has to be done, there's action that needs to be taken, and that they can work with us, right, to try to change things so that it's more just. And I say, be careful with what people throw back at you. We want to make sure that we express, you know, this work in the most powerful way, which is to say that housing justice is this intersectional justice. It's social and racial and economic justice. And so if we're talking to somebody who wants to, you know, recreate the divisions and say, well, if that group of people or that other group of people weren't acting the way they acted, you know, things would be different. I think we do push back to say, or to try to make it clear that these issues are interconnected, and that it's not one individual group's problem, trying to build unity across race and gender and all these other marginalized communities. I'll say here too, before I move on, there is an accompanying document where we go over several of the different kind of common arguments and counter arguments that this part of the conversation can bring up. And that's always changing, but can be useful. So I put this one here. The idea is, when we're talking about the bigger picture, that we're not fighting fire with fire, right? So as much as it's a problem of the very wealthy further making and investing their money into the Bay Area's economy, right? We can't fight their money with money, right? Or if we're seeing lots of hateful or divisive language, we can't respond back to that with division, right? We have to respond to hate with love, money with people power. And the idea is, we're not fighting fire with fire, we fight fire with water. Which I think usually works. And then there's the kind of two last sections of our organizing tool. It's about connecting in, right? And so they've heard now, we've introduced ourselves, we've shared about our stories, we've gone to the bigger picture. Now it's about really connecting them. So we ask, well, do you believe that housing is a human right, right? And there's other questions that go with that. And like we talked about last month, do you feel that that right is protected? Whose job is it then to protect that right? So really getting them to see, oh, you know what, maybe I have to actually get involved. You know, the reason we have that clipboard is because, not just so we can take good notes, usually we have a lot of flyers stashed in there. So making sure you know then what is the next meeting time, having a flyer, right, to give the person, talking to them about their own access needs as best as we're able to. And I think we do have abundant capacity in the community to meet access needs. And just learning, okay, well, if you have children and you can't come to the meeting, we can provide childcare and dinner, right? Or if you need a ride to the meeting, right? Oftentimes we can arrange transportation. If you have a scent, or if you're sensitive to scent, or you have other access needs like that, there's a way to accommodate in the space. So making it open, right? And being able to accept that the people we're talking to have different needs, answering any questions they have. And then again, we're usually wearing I'm not wearing it today, I should have, that EBHO shirt. And we want to give them the information about our organization, our membership. You can go online, right? Because maybe this person isn't able to come to the next meeting for a very good reason. They can still, if they're sparked, do that work on their own if they're left with enough information. And then the very last, this organizing fish piece is why we're trying to connect, right? We want as many of these people in as we can. All the little fish believe that housing is a human right. The big fish says human rights don't actually exist. So the last piece here of our organizing and one-on-one tool, we call the crunch. It's the most important part. And as fun or not, I don't know, I have a lot of fun with the other parts of it. This is the part that I've always had to have a lot of discipline with. It's where we really need this person's phone number. We really need this person's email address, right? We want to be able to stay in touch. And ideally, once we've received a phone number from a person, 2 or 3 days later, we're able to give them a text or a phone call and just remind them of the good conversation we had. Try to keep the relationship warm, so that they want to come into our space. We also ask them if they're comfortable sharing their story. And it's a little bit to do with EBHO's model, where we do so much storytelling in the media and you know, through our different communications work, that kind of the idea that we can do a lot to change the narrative in the Bay Area when we encounter these powerful stories. If the person you're talking to has a very good story, we want to make sure you know, we can share it. And then the last part of who else, right? Like who else in the building? Do you have any neighbors? Do you have anybody else that you know of that would really want to get plugged in? Maybe it's a niece or a nephew or something like that. And it's a good way to get a lead to the next person to knock on. Sometimes they'll tell you, don't knock on that other person's door. And that's also good information. And I'm just gonna really quickly here, oops, just show you again this organizing tool. So you print it out and you're good to go. You've got the introduction piece, notes to take, to try to get some of the story, scaling up to the bigger picture, connecting to the organization or to the program, and then that crunch section where we really want to get that information. I think we've been talking at you for a little while now. This is the end of my piece. I'm going to flip it back to Dolores. But I think what we'd like to do is a little practice run. Dolores, do you think that we've got time for that?
The practice run, what does that look like? Sorry. I think we're really good on time, but it's 2:08, so I think we're good on time.
So what we've got is so I'm the one sharing now. I can't pull it up, but we converted this one-on-one tool. I think the hope was to take the participants that we've got 25 with us, oopsie, and split you into pairs and practice a little bit of this. And we could take maybe 10 to 15 minutes for this exercise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you give, or maybe you want to go back, can you give some guidance, maybe some guiding questions? So step 1, introduce yourself. Step 2, like what does that look like, so that we have a little bit clearer instructions for this breakout session. And
Totally.
I will type that in the chat.
Yeah, I'm thinking we wanted to watch where we were at with time. I think we could take 20 minutes for this, and each person could take 10 minutes. And I think it's not really enough time to go really in depth with storytelling, but to see how far can you get in the one-on-one tool. So maybe you get to story and you don't manage to get to the bigger picture. Maybe you can finish the whole sheet in 10 minutes. That would mean that you're a really efficient organizer.
Do they have access to the sheet though?
Yeah, and I think we can just put the sheet in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah, Dolores, I'm wondering, just because if we could switch back sharing, I can drop the document in the chat box.
Okay, yeah, let's do that.
And again, seeing all these nice comments in the chat box.
There's actually some really good comments, starting with William's comment, if you want to go through that. I think that's the most recent one I've seen. Yeah, right after a lot of people saying great tips. And then William says, Dolores, this is true. Except when you are the face of the organizing efforts, you feel obligated to make it successful, and you feel responsible if it isn't. So there is an internal push. And then Azul gave a really good response to that, if you want to read from there.
I saw that comment as it was coming in. It's like Azul then offering that's why it's important not to make anyone the face of the movement or event, to ensure that it stays non-hierarchical and community-led, which is a really brilliant contribution, Azul. And then I know Lillian had said a little bit about the anxiety of when we set a goal, and I was offering this take of, that when we set goals, it's almost never the way we want it to be at the end. We have this term that we call losing forward, that I think I have to be better about it myself. But the idea is like, even if we don't get the end result we wanted, the way we've moved forward means that it's not really a loss. So thinking about what is a disaster and what's not a disaster. That said, we do actually want to win things. We don't always just want to be losing forward. And yeah, I'm sorry, folks. I'm just gonna really quickly drop this one-on-one tool in the chat. It's not a PDF. It is converted into a Google Doc so that you could make a copy of it yourself. And that is this document that just went into the chat. And then we're gonna, I guess I'll let Dolores divvy us up, but into pairs. And then we'll see you in about 20 more minutes. And if you're somebody who, if you can't, oh, sorry, let me switch access. If you can't.
I think you can do the pair piece, right? Do you see that? Does it say breakout rooms? I'm trying to get the thing to pop up for me, or else I can do it. Okay, got it. Breakout rooms. Sorry, it's not popping up just yet. Do you see that on your?
Oh.
Since I'm doing the screen share, it's not letting me do it, but
the breakout groups?
Yeah. Do you see the breakout room option?
So I just tried to open that link.
I don't.
And it says I need access.
I know, yeah. I'm trying to switch that.
Okay.
Ah.
I know.
Okay, let me stop the share real quick so that I can put everyone in the breakout groups.
You do the breakout groups.
There
I'm
it is.
gonna fix this document so people can get it.
Oh, tech stuff. Yeah, so I also want to share let's take 2 more minutes because there was another longer comment from Lillian. And Lillian, I want to hear more from you, so maybe reflect on this, but I want to hear more from you about what you think causes the going south so we can respond to it in that way. Is the going south just not the wins, not getting the wins, which Ronald addressed, or is it something else? So please help us understand that more, and we'll expand on it when we get back. I'm going to put everyone into breakout rooms. Ronald should have the doc ready for everyone to access. He'll type in the chat, it's good to go. But for now, let's just get y'all into breakout rooms. Oh, I see what it's doing. Let me see. 1 second. Pattern.
And then I've set it to view, not edit, because I was thinking if everybody's editing the doc, it's going to get a little uncontrollable. But if you want to make type notes into the document, you could just make a copy of it. You should be able to make a copy.
So can everyone hear me or just Irma right now?
I can hear you. I just put everyone into breakout rooms, and I'm going to open those now. Azul, if you can stay in this main room, because we're odd numbers. So I'm going to pair up with you. Or, yeah, no, I'll pair up with Azul. I was going to say, Ronald, you do it, but. Or maybe I'm going to go into this one with Azul.
down, and then I'll sign it off. So you take care.
That's really, pushing, advocating for this and giving some guidance on how to move forward.
Awesome. I think we're back in the main room now.
Okay.
Yeah, that just kind of happened. We were talking and we were in the main room.
Yeah, that was rude.
Dolores, you muted.
Oops. Let me share my screen again so we can jump back into the PowerPoint. So we are way past this slide. Practice run. Okay, let's get some feedback on how that went for people. Yeah.
I'll speak. This is William. I think me and Damien had a good conversation. The tool kind of, it's easy to use. You start off, you kind of start that conversation about how did you get into affordable housing, and it inevitably brings up a story that are familiar with or feel, and and are amazed about, and want to publish that story because you think, okay, my story was difficult. Then you hear someone else's story and you're like, wow, okay, yeah, that tops mine. And but the form is definitely useful. It kind of guides you through the conversation, and it just leads you to where, if a person feels that housing is a human right, then that's it. You good for organizing. I mean, you got a story, and you feel like something should happen. You kind of know the reasons why housing is so expensive, and let's do something about it. Let's change it, and we can do that by organizing. You give me your information, I'll follow up with you. Let's see what we can do. And I think it's just a conversation, really. That's really what it creates. It's a conversation that if you are living in affordable housing, you're familiar with that conversation. You're talking your lingo, And so yeah, it was easy, and I think Damien would say the same, that it was easy to just draw it out because our stories were very similar, very similar. So I'll shut up.
Damien, do you want to hop in on that and respond? Do you agree?
Oh yeah, I definitely would say I agree. I think it's when you live in affordable housing and you experience just the issues of trying to secure housing, that experience radicalizes you, and it makes you want to become a part of the movement. It's like, man, waiting, as William was saying, waiting 7 years for to get affordable housing. My mom waiting 5 years, and things like that, and yeah, it's just when you experience that, definitely want to become a part of the movement. I think so.
Yeah. Anyone else want to share out? Let's look at the chat box. Maybe there's something in the chat box.
I want to share out quick. I always do this. I talk and then I also want to share. But I had a great conversation with a man, Dave, who had joined us by phone and had to drop off. But we got to that part about the bigger picture. And I asked Dave, what do you think is causing the rents to go up? He said, it's gentrification. And I said, yes, of course, absolutely. And then what is gentrification? And then I think getting more into, the actual mechanic then of, there are people moving in who can pay higher rents. And then there's, that phenomenon, just getting a little deeper into it. So I think I just wanted to name that. I had a partner and he said, the reason rents are going up is gentrification. And I think just wanting to take another step to try to understand what does gentrification actually look like. And then the very bold assertion that gentrification is not the natural way of things, and that we could or may actually have more just outcomes than what the market will give us. But I just wanted to add that part.
So let's go back into, Ronald, do you want to facilitate the large group prompts?
Yeah, would love to. So again, I think this is how we want to close all of our sessions out, and we're coming up here on just the last couple minutes, flipping it, making it as open as we can, and hopefully getting to hear more thoughts from you all about the content we covered today. So these are some prompts. What do you think about that importance of the relationship building and the leadership development? If you could speak to your own experience with maybe having your own leadership developed by others. That's kind of the second question about how were you or who pulled you into this work, and trying to be reflective about that, or maybe share a story. And then if neither of those things speak to you, is there any clarification about these different approaches to organizing that we've talked about today, that community organizing is really centering, this people power, this bottom-up change? It is quite different from, other forms of organizing that we see. So if anybody had a thought about that, and then I'll zip my mouth, and I really do we want to flip it to you all. You should be able to unmute yourselves. And again, this is how we just want to close out. Anybody feeling free to answer some of these things.
I guess.
Hello?
Oh,
this is Charla. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, Charla.
Hi. I just want to say that I'm excited that I came to this session. Unfortunately, I'm sorry I missed the first one. I hope you guys have it again. I'm new to housing, and I'm just excited about finding solutions to help my tenants, because I'm from the property management prospect of it, and looking at it from a different point of view. But I also understand what my tenants are going through, and applicants that are consistently or looking for housing, and it's tough out there. And so I'm looking at it from a standpoint of helping my tenants organize some of the issues that they see that are going on I'm in the downtown area of Oakland. So just helping them, organize and guide them in organizing their frustrations of how, let's say, gentrification is affecting them as well. So I'm excited that I showed up, and I'm looking forward to the next two sessions.
Thank you, Charla. And you can get a recording. I think we named this in the beginning, but just reminding, these sessions are being recorded, so you can go back and check out what we covered last month.
Okay, great.
And Katie, did I see you also jumping up?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna address some of these questions, I guess. I wanted to say that it's honestly just been fantastic to be able to not only receive this educational experience, but just to have these breakout moments and engage one-on-one with people who are passionate about this, specifically because their own personal experience has led them to the point of saying, hey, this needs to change. That's just been incredibly rewarding and exciting for me. I mean, I just did one with Irma, and then last time I did one with Hannah. And both times it's just been absolutely amazing. But in terms of how I got pulled into organizing, for me, that was something that when I was living in a vehicle, it kind of became the thing that kept me going, was just focusing on the fact that if it could happen to me, it could happen to absolutely anybody. Those circumstances, it just seems so bizarre. I mean, everybody who's heard the whole story about it is just like, how could that possibly happen? So once I finally got stabilized in housing, I put out a lot of feelers just Googling about organizations in the area, and I happened to stumble across Everyone Home, which oversees the continuum of care of homelessness service providers. And I was really lucky in that once I reached out to them, they asked me to sit on a committee, and I met someone who was working there then. Her name is Laura Guzman. She's been involved in housing issues in the Bay Area for decades now. But yeah, she pretty much engaged with me exactly the way this tool suggests doing that. And once I conveyed to her what brought me there, she said, okay, you're somebody with lived experience of homelessness, and you have a lot of great things to contribute. So basically what our new project is pushing you out in front of things as much as possible, which culminated last November and me running for an elected position at that organization where over 80 people had to vote somebody onto the leadership board, and I got voted onto it. And it's just because I stood up there and said, hey, we need people who have been homeless, people who've experienced housing insecurity in the rooms where decisions are made and money gets allocated. And that's kind of become like my whole new purpose in life, is exactly that, is, I guess, community organizing by its very definition. So that's why I'm here.
It's a really beautiful sentiment, Katie, and I think we all appreciate you being vulnerable with your own experience and that insight too, that we do need people with the lived experience, in leadership positions, right? I was just thinking about the way you answered the question, who pulled you in? It sounded like you kind of pulled yourself into it after the experience you had, but that once you were trying to get plugged in, there was somebody there, a much bigger, who was able to, make you know that you were in the right place. And I think it happens a lot that way. And when we want to get involved, we have to be a little, we have to be persistent to get to the right space. And then you found the right space when you feel connected. And
yeah, actually, I guess to elaborate
I was just gonna see you know what? Finish that thought, Katie. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to add that I see a real distinction there. Like, I was lucky in that somebody at, that particular organization saw the value that I had to offer, but it's a very different experience for me than this, because that's often not the case. I mean, when you're engaging with the people who are supposed to represent the community, who like unilaterally are homeowners with master's degrees and six-figure salaries, it's a very different kind of vibe. And, they're usually not overt about saying that people who live in affordable housing or people who've been homeless don't have a place at this table, but they covertly absolutely believe that, just due to internalized bias. So I do think that it's critically important to restructure power surrounding those resources and how we deal with these issues. In that very specific way of trying to bring everyone together, people like you guys and me and people like that.
Yeah, and you named the organizer in your story was Laura Guzman. Laura Guzman, is that the name you said? Right?
Yes.
That's the organizer who used pretty much what this tool said. The tool that Ronald gave, he formatted it, but it's by no means a new tool. That is a very old strategy, right? And it's a great tool for any organizer. So you named that she organized you, and you're recognizing now, like, oh, wait. And that's something I think that I went through as well as an organizer, where I was like, when I was learning about the one-on-one and the tool, I thought back on the conversations I had had with other people and was like, what? They were totally using the one-on-one skill on me in that moment. And it was a light bulb, because those felt like very authentic conversations, and they were very authentic conversations, right? So the more you do this one-on-one tool, the easier and more conversational it gets, and it's easier to do. So I want to go and jump through to these comments, because we have a good number of them in the chat box. So Deetra Harris says, I think this was a great exercise. It really opens the floor for conversation and insight to what people feel about affordable housing and how to tackle this problem. Lillian Phaeton says, it is just so exciting to talk to like-minded people who want to make change and believe housing is a human right. That is so important. And Asul says, thank you, Katie, for sharing so much strength and vulnerability. William says, Charla, we need more property managers like you who care enough about their residents to show up in a space like this Advocacy 101, to better relate. May Pennington says, I am so thankful for all the people, mostly women and non-binary friends, in my life who were loud and strong with their difficult opinions that inspired confidence in me to also be loud and strong with my opinions. And William also said, Katie, you are so right. We need more people that have been impacted by the decisions surrounding affordable housing to be a part of the decision-making process. Let's see. We are doing really well on time, folks. We have 2 more minutes, I think, or so, maybe 7. Ronald, maybe double check. If anyone else wants to jump in on this and answer these questions and just reflect back on this. Also, actually, what we should do is also jump into just general question and answer. Any thoughts, anything you want us to expand on, anything you want us to name. There was an earlier comment in the chat box by Lillian around how not to shoot your movement in the foot. It can be so inspiring, but when it goes south, it can be devastating and can make people resistant to community action. I'm not trying to be a downer. I guess it's important to recognize the success of the struggle and also the small victories as they come. There's also victory in the learning process, the common struggle and action. But I'd like to hear any thoughts about how to mitigate against the potential disillusionment and trauma in your community of getting people involved in a difficult fight and then it going bad. So that's a really complicated, complex question. Part of the reason that we count the small victories is to keep motivation and to keep our spirits up. That's why we want to make sure that we are celebrating when we can. And that is part of the way to fight back against disillusionment, is to count those victories. And a lot of it is a community effort of being a part. That is why community organizing is so important, because you are all going to work with each other to maintain high spirits and to maintain that collective goal. So if someone is feeling really down, hopefully someone else is going to say like, no, I have the energy. This is why, like, let's keep that vision going. And there are going to absolutely be tough moments. I also was wondering, like, what causes that disillusionment, or what causes people to, or movements to, lose momentum and lose feeling. Sometimes in my experience, that disillusionment comes from one person, or people, or it could come from, this is an example, it could come from one person whose goals, whose motives for being a part of the action have shifted, or maybe they feel unheard, maybe they actually are there because they're there to promote their own agenda. So that's when you as an organizer step in with that relationship building piece, connect with them one-on-one and get them on track to the collective vision. And if they feel like they're not being heard, you give them the space to be heard. And that's one way that I feel like we can handle, we can support people to not feeling disillusioned. I invite Ronald or anyone else to jump in as well with a response to that.
Just that people have such big hearts, and the bigger your heart, the more likely you are to get into these spaces. And with that comes a need to, right, just as Dolores said, make space for what people are going through. And I think that can happen a lot. And hopefully when we're working together well, everybody feels heard and like they have belonging.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to ask a question, I guess.
Yes.
So Ronald, I think in your part of the presentation, you mentioned that community organizing needs to be continuous.
Oh, that was, yeah.
Oh, that was you, Dolores?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you. What if that's not for everybody? Like, I feel like there might be some people who might just want to contribute for like an hour, a day, a week, a month.
Mm-hmm.
But so I guess there'll be tiers of people, right? There are people that are there for the long haul, and there might be a category of people that would be there to contribute for a short amount of time. right?
Yeah. And doing
Okay.
that leadership building piece helps you identify who those are. You definitely mentioned another organizing tool, which is the pyramid tier. The bottom tier is going to be the biggest group of people who are, you know, just engaging on every so often. Your so often group of folks who they'll show up to the action, or they'll click on the link in the email to send a email to their council member, but they may not be as highly engaged. And then that middle tier tends to be a more narrow group, and that is your people who are highly engaged, that you're building their leadership skills up, and they're very motivated. They are excited about it. They treat this like a part-time job where they know they have responsibilities, and they show up consistently. And then the top of the triangle, your top tier, is your main leaders. Although we said that it is a leaderless movement, but there are leaders who are examples to everybody else of what that looks like. And those main leaders at the top is even a smaller group, and those are the folks that treat it like a full-time job and help train everybody else, can take responsibility. Those are the folks that usually will continue with this. So if someone steps out of another tier, you have, if a leader is saying, I am burnt out, I need a break, which happens, you look at your second tier of folks who are treating this with very good amounts of respect and energy, and you say, hey, do you want to take on this leadership position? So it is continuous in the way that even if an individual is not continuing with it, the movement is still continuing.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, cool, thanks.
I also just wanted to add a little bit to this response. Thinking about the idea of like take space, make space. So you want to make sure to create like a culture where folks feel like not everything is up to them to move a movement forward, because I think that that's what leads to burnout. So when we set a tone of like, we're gonna always be distributing work, and there's no shame in saying, hey, like I need to take some time for myself, or like this is not the time for me, so I'm gonna make space for someone else. It like creates more rotation and movement within community building, which I think is important, and moves away from this idea of like becoming the star or like the head of something. So yeah, because I think that leads to burnout. So I just wanted to add that in there.
Thank you. Yes. We've run out of time for questions, but as usual, you can email me or email Ronald, email EBHO if you have more questions. We're going to jump into this last piece, which is pretty much what comes next. For those of you who are part of the Leadership Academy, our learning lab is happening next Friday. I'm going to get homework out to everyone on Monday, and you'll be looking at different leadership styles, and that'll be your homework, as well as some other potential homework assignments. And we'll just dive in more into this conversation and this topic. So if you have additional questions, you can bring them into that space. And then also, Ronald wanted to ask about just general feedback or ideas, and open that up if folks have some thoughts around how these sessions have been running, what you hope to see, what you don't like, what you want more of, those types of things. Again, you can share them. We have 3 more minutes, or you can even email us or put it in the chat box, whatever you like.
It's so, I just wish we could all be in the same room together, although hopefully there are like more people that have come because maybe we're not like looking on the bright side, but it would be so nice to have like everybody have an email address for everybody, and just like we were saying about organizing, because there's so many cool people, and we're supposed to be networking, and I feel like if we wait too long to create that document, it won't be as useful. So that's my feedback.
Thank you for that reminder.
Lillian makes lemonade for folks from lemons. So we're all missing out not being in person.
So what do we have to do that though? I mean, because it would be nice to have
Get everyone's consent that they're okay with sharing their email address with everybody.
Okay, and do you think it would be possible for people to have like a where people are coming from, like the chat thing, the intro that we did, to go with the names so that we can kind of,
oh yeah,
that would be so cool.
How about I send out a Google form and folks can fill it out, and then everyone can see the responses. So you just click on the spreadsheet and it'll show you everyone's responses. So the question will be, put your name, your email address. Do you want to put your phone number, where you're from? So a lot of questions, and then folks can access it that way. And folks are putting their email addresses in the chat box if folks want to grab them now too. Yeah, I'm happy to leave this open. I do have to hop off at 3, but I can, if Ronald can stay on for like 5 extra minutes just to keep the chat open. And let me make sure I save this chat.
Yay. So wait, how do we do that?
And sorry, and I think somebody had asked again about the recording. We've got the recording. I know it's uploaded. EBHO, believe it or not, has its own YouTube channel. I think we've got like a total of 15 viewers in all of our history, but you can find EBHO on YouTube, and the first session was recorded there. This session will also be uploaded there. And super thanks to Dolores for getting the subtitles.
Then, and when you record the chat, how is that separate? Do we?
Yeah, that is separate, but I'm figuring out how to download it so that we can save it and send it out as well.
Okay, so I don't need to frantically write down people's emails right this second, or
no?
Okay, great.
If I can figure this out. Ronald, if you can figure it out on your end too. And I don't know if everyone sees in the chat box the file symbol. The file symbol will let you save the chat, but I don't know if that's just for the hosts or if it's also an option for you all. Next to where it says to everyone, I see like 3 little dots. And then I also see a file symbol. Nope, not on my end. Okay.
I was able to download it and get get a copy of the chats and all emails from that file link.
Okay. And Amanda just messaged me with how to get the chat. So thank you, Amanda. All right.
And I've saved the chat as well. So the chat is
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I do have to hop off. If folks want to stay in, are you available for 5 extra minutes to stay in?
Yeah, I can stay for 5 minutes.
Okay.
I'm gonna start using my Jewel though.
Wait, let me stop recording. We do not want to promote any.
Oh no, never mind. You didn't see that.
Where is the stop recording button? Okay.
Stop recording.
There it is.